All righty. Good evening, everybody. We've got a webinar tonight, and we're meeting with Tricia Van Eck first, and she will be followed by Patty Guilford. Tricia Van Eck has been a curator at the MCA. She's going to tell us. I'm guessing 6 years. And, I think, I've known the MCA and the Museum of Contemporary Art in Chicago, and have been involved with it in different kinds of capacities for like almost 30 years. And I think progressively it's becoming more and more accessible, and I think that the people who work there, the director and the curators, and even the staff go out into the community more, and I think there's a concerted effort to re-energize how the Museum of Contemporary Art works as an extension of Madeline Grinstein's tenure as director of the museum. I think that it's about considering the public as equals and that artists as an intrinsic part of that whole experience, and I think they're bringing more artists into the fold and letting them participate with the moneyed people at openings and making artists be equals instead of just unfortunate providers. I think it's all really good, and I think that the way the curators function has been morphing, has been changing, and I'm sure Tricia's going to tell us some of that. Tricia, can you begin with telling us, a little bit like where you went to college and then how you got from there to here, and then, tell us what you do. Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks, Paul. Thanks for everyone having me speak. My background is pretty circuitous. The first thing I ever did for a gallery or an exhibition was my boyfriend went to the School of the Art Institute, and I wrote the artist statement for his exhibition. And I mention that because I think it's really important that, and I'll talk about my background, but I think it's really important that there's a DIY mindset, that you start, how you get started is by doing it. You don't wait until a curator or a gallery approaches you, you make your own shows. And from that, then I went to New York, and I was the director of the Willoughby Sharp Gallery, a small gallery. Willoughby Sharp was a performance fluxus artist. And when I was working for him, I went to Fred Wilson's Longwood Arts Project in the Bronx, and I was really impressed by what he was doing with the students. And I realized that maybe I should teach high school. So I started teaching high school in New York for 5 years. So, and then I returned to Chicago, and I did a kind of a do-it-yourself program. I studied at U of C, the School of the Art Institute in Columbia. I actually got my degree from Columbia, but they let me take classes at U of C and School of the Art Institute. And that was my master's. My undergrad was at U of I in Champaign, and I also went to school in England for a while. But always I've been interested in museums, and since I'm from Chicago, so as a little child, my birthday present every year was to get museum membership so I could go to the museum. And I think I did a show with Tino Segal, KISS, and what he said about museums is, for me, and I think it really is important to just think about museums, that it's one of the few places where you can have this individual, private experience with the individual ideas of an artist. So it's where one person can go into a place in the public realm, and they can have this intimate, or as intimate as they possibly can, with the ideas of an artist. And that's part of, I think, what you were mentioning, Paul, about the museum trying to be more on a level playing field with the viewer. And that's what my show, Without You I'm Nothing, is trying to address, that connection, that fundamental connection that artists can have with the audience. And but working in a museum, the typical museum experience is people look at a work of art for 3 seconds. So you guys are making these works, laboring over them for extended amounts of time, and then people just look at it for 3 seconds. And what I'm interested in doing is trying to, as a curator, to extend that dialogue and to offer a way to get into the mindset of either the artist and the work, or to surround the artist with some kind of context, so that there is a much deeper appreciation and deeper understanding of the ideas and the work of the artist. And I've tried to do that in a number of shows. In the Dan Flavin show, having a, I mean, I don't know how much you want to talk about how I've done this in various shows, but Dan Flavin with his letters that he wrote at the time. Oh, am I still on?
I can see you. Yep.
Hello?
Yes.
Oh, okay. It just dropped.
It happens.
And please feel free to ask me any questions
if you want, Tricia, if you want, we can unmute everybody and see if anybody has any questions.
Yeah,
Yes.
Sure.
Okay, hold on.
Good time.
Unmute all. All right. Oh, it's like art. Does anybody have a question? Not yet.
Okay. So I'll continue with what I'm interested in.
Right, Tricia, hold on one second. Okay, let me mute everybody. Okay, you're good to go.
Okay, so I think so. I've done various shows where I've tried to show original source material, like Andy Warhol and even Tony Fitzpatrick, to go to his source material.
Can you define what you mean by that?
Well,
Source
with
material?
Warhol, look at the. So we showed the paintings of Marilyn to just look at the photographs that he used of Marilyn, to look at, to present, not just look at, to present the actual Life magazine articles that he drew from to create his paintings. Tony Fitzpatrick provided tons of source material of, I could go to his studio and look at all the different things that he had and choose to really give a sense of who the person is, who he is as an artist, why Chicago is so important to him. He provide a lot of books so that you're really getting, for him, you're getting a fuller extent of his mindset and his way of viewing the world and what that world is. Because I think it's so important. I'll skip on to what I'm looking at as, in a way, what I'm really looking at is artists who are completely in their world. And they're, okay, so what a lot of what I do, I'll back up actually before I talk about that. I like to create experiences, as I've mentioned, and they can be in any medium. So I've shown artist books, performance, sound, installation, environmental, conceptual art, but I'm also interested in providing or involving a community and creating communal situations to connect people, engage them in this discussion, in a kind of discussion of what are the ideas that the artist is presenting. What is the situation or the world or the history or the society that that artist is addressing in a way that can hopefully foster a kind of community of artists and audience. And so I'm interested in creating a platform for people to do that. But in a way, I often work with younger artists. So it hopefully I try to provide a chance for them to author kind of uncertainty, uncertainty so that they can really have the strength and the conviction to go to their vision. And,
that's a beautiful thing. You know,
it's not easy. It's you know, so many people resist that, and so it's to try to encourage them to push their work. But also in a way push them as in a way that makes them stand right on the edges, you know, right before you jump when you're on a plane, you know, skydiving, that edge where you're comfortable, and then give them that push, but also to also remind them of the audience that to somehow make it, if they can't make it easy for the public to understand, then I try to make that easy for the public to understand.
Can I, let me back this up a little bit.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, I think we're dealing with mostly a group of artists who would love to have museum exposure, and most haven't. So I think, you know, I want to back it up to, I mean, I've got a couple of different questions here. How do artists get on your radar, and then how do you check out these young artists that you tend to work with? How do you know, how does this happen? How does it get from I never heard of them to including them in a group exhibit?
Okay, so there's a few ways. I try to go to as many shows as I can. I have a performance series right now that's it's making it very challenging for me to even have the time to go out, but I try to go out at night. People email me, Facebook, but I try to see what's out there in the galleries, both apartment galleries, like Acre or Herald or Heaven, smaller galleries, as well as established galleries. And so, and also it's word of mouth. So that's why that DIY is so important, because I think if nobody's asking you to be in a show, then you need to do your own shows. And you need to make it so, make yourself so obvious that nobody can miss you. Because that's part of the artist's job too. If I don't know about you, how are you, and it's not really hounding me and saying, oh, you got to come, but making your work in this show. You know, if you're curating shows where other people are in, they're going to invite you to be in your shows. So, and with the economic situation as it is, there's tons of storefront galleries that are empty, and so it's pretty easy to, you know, approach a landlord and say, hey, I want to show a show, your place is empty, we want to do X, Y, Z, and it'll be up for 2 months or 1 month, or we'll kick us out when you've got a tenant. And so that's how you get on my radar, I guess.
Are you paying attention mostly to Chicago artists, or is it international or national, or what?
You know, I pay attention to Chicago artists. I mean, I go to art fairs, I go to galleries in New York, I travel a lot in Europe, so I go probably more to see European artists than New York, but I try to see, I mean, I'm constantly trying to see as much as possible. I mean, that's what we do is look and see.
Okay.
But,
I'm sorry.
But
I'll
no,
go.
Go ahead.
One of the other things you alluded to is that the curators have different tasks. I mean, like you and Lynn and Michael have different, and Julie have different jobs or different specialties. I mean, I assume that's typical for most museums, but I'm wondering how those kinds of tasks break down. How is yours different than theirs?
Well, I think we have different interests, and often they overlap. I've done a lot of artist books. I've actually been at the museum for 12 years, so wow. I've done tons of artist book shows. I've done a lot of performative shows, sound shows. Those are things that I've been interested in, but also they haven't been regularly shown. So not a lot of the curators are necessarily doing showing those works. So it's more, those are my interests. Like my interactions, I have 15 weeks of performance artists, one each week. Most of those are from Chicago. And, you know, she has an interest in Chicago artists, but she shows, you know, Lynn does many other things, but we all work on 12 by 12. So we're always looking for Chicago artists, and we're always, even in a group show, looking for Chicago artists. I mean, even in a collection show, we're looking for Chicago artists and other artists, and not always just artists. We're looking at collectors' work too. So, but for interactions, the 15 weeks of performance is mostly Chicago, although some artists have, you know, moved, and some are in New York, and some are in other places that I've kept in contact with over the years, that I originally met them in Chicago.
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
It does. When you propose, what happened? How do you propose? Do you propose exhibits? Do exhibition ideas come from the top down, or is there a flow both ways?
It's a combination of that. Some shows are still from well, no, all of the shows are new from Madeline. So it's a combination of shows that are suggested, ideas that are presented. It's kind of fluid.
Is there a vote, or is it up to Madeline, or how does it? I mean, is it democratic or dictatorial, or what?
You know, there's no one process, so things happen in different ways. So, like 12 by 12 is a holdover from the last 12 years. That's totally democratic. All the curators meet, we each present ideas, and then we just have veto power. So that's probably the most democratic. Different shows work different, like Lynn's Jim Nutt show was suggested to Lynn by Elizabeth Smith. The previous chief curator, Lynn, thought it was a good idea, and Madeline, you know, continued thinking it was a good idea. So it all depends on the idea or the situation, and now Michael Darling's new, so things are being added to the schedule, and we're having meetings over what exhibitions to put on the schedule, and so it's fluid. I don't think there's any one route.
With a show like the Jim Nutt show, who determines the installation? Like the order where the walls go, the order of the art, the number of pieces, you know, those things.
I didn't work on the Jim Nutt show, so that Lynn would be better to answer that, but I would think that would be the curator working in concert with the artist, as well as working within the existing walls for budgetary concerns, and you know, trying to work all three of those to come up with the most elegant solution.
Okay, cool. I see that somebody's got their hand up. I'm going to unmute Susan. Susan, do you have a question? Hi.
I do. How far in advance are you scheduling?
Again, that's kind of fluid. Some shows, like my show Without You I'm Nothing, I think was maybe 6 months maybe in advance, maybe a little bit more, because it's a collection show. Some of the 12 by 12 shows are anywhere from 3 months to a year. A show like Lee Bonteque was 3 to 4 years in advance. It depends on many different factors. A large show like Jeff Koons, it was a large show, but that was 8 months, 6 months. So
that seems like lightning speed.
Yeah,
yeah, I thought it was a longer lead time. So
I almost, yeah, that one was and probably that could have had 3 years planning.
And we're still like that. Shipping and the logistics of shipping have to be significant.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, you guys who ask questions, once I've been called on you, I cannot lower your hand. You have to either click that hand button or make your hand go down if you want. Otherwise, I won't call on you again. Is there anybody else who's got a question now?
I do. It's just a comment as a 62-year-old but a relatively new artist. When I hear younger artists, it's just like a generational thing. It happens in all professions. But aren't there people with new ideas who are 50, 60, 40, 50, 60 years old? So what is it about newness, young artists?
Thanks, kiddo. I like your question.
Maybe I could tell. I like to color your hair too there, buddy.
There you go.
I think there is an interest in new artists. There's an interest in individuality and individual voice that one should not get hung up on those. What I'm talking about is artists. I'm looking for the depth, engagement with their ideas, the vision. I'm looking at artists who know themselves, who are really trying to figure out what they do. So Hamish Fulton was just here not too long ago. He's an older artist. He creates walks, and I've included him in many of the MCA Artist Book Collection shows. And when he gave a talk to the School of the Art Institute, and he said when he was in school, so many students, now these are young artists, they follow what is successful or follow other artists, or in this case, look to younger artists. But his teacher asked him what he liked to do, and he said walk. And so that's what, and then he did that, and he creates work which he calls nothing, because it's about the experience. And so I think artists need to focus in on what it is they do and not pay attention to the economic demands, although, you know, those are a valid concern, but not pay attention to what society, oh, we're looking at younger artists, but really think about what is their unique voice, what is their unique vision, and give voice to that, and push the field. Like, just think of Einstein. He really embraced the challenge of his medium, and even if it meant going to somewhere unknown, untested, raw, and push it. And that's really what artists have to do, regardless of their age. And you can see intensity you can see it in dance and performance, and somehow people don't think that they can see it in objects, but you can see it in objects. And Marina Abramovich says, you know, if you're not 100% in the now, the public, like a dog, knows it. They leave, and that's what how people look at objects too. They look at something that has that passion, that intensity, that person who is really expressing who they are and figuring out how they can push that medium that they happen to be using, whatever it is, and how they can blend the two to really, like Picasso, push the medium to as far as it can go. And so I don't really see where age can come in that. I mean, sometimes it's easier for younger artists because they don't have the economic pressures that one may feel with a family or a job, or, you know, that these things that can kind of make one feel like they need to conform. And so often younger people, and you see it a lot, really, like the Andy Warhol show we did. 1962 to 1964 was Andy's really, where he was really pushing the field as far as it can go. Those are the most valuable paintings. I don't know if it was necessarily because he was young. He wasn't even young. But he was doing something that nobody else was doing. And he was looking at how Jackson Pollock painted on the floor. He was looking at commercial signs. He was looking at popular culture in a way that hadn't, and it was a complete break with abstract expressionism. And that's what somebody needs to do, regardless of, really look at who they are, and because Andy didn't shy away from who he was. I mean, Theaster Gates, who I worked with, he is interested in African-American spirituals and blending Asian traditions, and he, you know, made an Asian temple, fusion of an Asian African-American temple at the MCA, and he brought all of his friends, the black monks, musicians, singers, and they mixed spirituals, chants, jazz. And someone might say, well, that's not art, but it was pushing the boundaries of what is art, pushing what is creation, what is community, what is artistic production. You know, same with I guess Mark Bradford, who I'm working with now, and that'll be a show opening May, I think, 27th. He started out making economic signs for his mother in a beauty parlor, and that's what he uses still as his basis. He goes to his community, takes down signs from the community. You know, this signs that say DNA testing, or father, get your child back, or hair braiding. And he's interested in that as a material, and he pushes painting further and further till that people look at it and say, that how is this a painting? But it's abstract painting. So he's not taking this old version of what is abstract painting, but really looking at how can I talk about the community and painting, abstraction. How can I infuse abstraction with a conversation about community and realms that are hardly ever connected? Because you're usually a communal artist or you're a painter. And so Unji Ju, who said to him, "Oh, I think you should make your paintings larger." And he said, "Well, I don't have the money." So she bought him the canvas, and that was the push he needed. So maybe this is your push, you know, to really be bolder and it's boldness in that it's listening to the inner voice of. I mean, it sounds so corny. It's almost kind of dumb, but it's really listening to who you are, which is really hard to do, because you get all this, you know, other voices saying, "Oh, who's the young flavor of the month?" or "You should be doing this," or "You should be doing that." But really, being bold and trying to figure out who you are, and then, you know, go see as much as you can to see where your medium is and what your medium is. I have to admit, I don't have a lot of patience for landscape painters or abstract expressionist painters who are kind of continuing the same tradition and they're putting their own spin on it, but it's not really, it's putting a spin. It's not who they are. It's not really getting to what is this medium. I mean, that's what Mark's looking at, painting, and really saying, what is painting? And then showing your work. So really getting out there to see who's getting into the dialogue of who's doing what with that medium, where is it? But not in a way so that you can get their style, but really so that it's an investigation. Who's doing that? How are they working painting? Or whatever your field is, or photography, and then showing it, because showing it, I mean, that's what I learned at Willoughby's. You have to frame it in a way that people understand, and often you know, they like to look at pretty things. So not that your work needs to be pretty, but somehow to give them a hook or some kind of way into making it palatable. Not spelling out, because you're doing the boldness. You're being brave. That's the hard work, and then you're just trying to articulate in a way that people can understand.
Tricia, I think that's really good. I noticed that a couple of people have their hands raised, so let's take a question or two, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Sarah Kernahan, I'm going to unmute you. And Sarah, go ahead and ask your question if you still remember it.
No problem. I was actually curious about the 12 by 12 and what the process was. Like, is it a program that's focused on young Chicago artists, or is it based around Illinois, or how does that process work?
Trish, Sarah's in Canada, so she's asking from a Canadian perspective.
Okay. So that show started out with Francesco Bonami had the idea to that we, 12 by 12 could be a way that we could start a real community of artists by beginning with art students. Students who were the parameters were students who were 5 years or no more out of school, and then we've gradually released that. So we've had various artists who are way beyond 5 years of school, but we have still stuck to the geography of Chicago. So I think maybe Evanston is maybe considered Chicago, but Canada is definitely not in Chicago, though you have similar weather, but
yeah.
Sorry on that one.
No need to apologize. I just think it's a really interesting program to be able to give people the opportunity to actually have their first exhibition in a museum. It's just a really interesting model.
Well, that's what that was the thinking behind it. That part of becoming an artist is really figuring out. So that's part of the going deep and really figuring out. Okay, what do I want to tell people? Do I need to tell them in 12 photographs? What I need to say, is it best told in 3 photographs? Is it best told in a video? Or and then if after you make your choice, then what size, where does it go on what wall? So all of these decisions, I mean, we're constantly making decisions you're constantly making decision in your artistic practice. So this is just one more of the artistic practice. But back to the point of the DIY storefront, it shouldn't be waiting for a 12 by 12 or some place in Canada that offers it, but making your own opportunity so that you are, because the choices that you have to make. Okay, I have one wall that everybody else has all the other gallery. I have one wall. What am I going to put? So it really forces you to make decisions about what do I really want? What do I want to say to people? What do I want them to get from my work? And if it's just to sell money, well, if it's just to make money, then that probably isn't the best. Because it's about some message and that's the idea of going deep. What is the message that you really have to say, and how is the best way to get that across? And so having your work in a show sometimes can help that. I've seen artists where they just make the safest choice and put up the works that they're most comfortable with, and they don't really learn a whole lot. It's the artists who, like 4 days before the show, much as I hate that, 4 days before the show, they say, oh my God, I got to do this. And then the show changes. And it's a nightmare for us, but it's a much stronger show. I mean, ideally, that conversation should be happening 3-4 months before the show, where you throw it all away, if that is what you're doing, or you really hone in and figure it out.
Cool. All right, Sarah, thank you. And I'm going to mute you again, and then I saw that Eric had a question, and if others have a question, raise your hands. Eric, you are unmuted. Go ahead.
Hi, Tricia.
Hi.
My question, I guess, yesterday we were at Wesley's studio, and he brought up something that I thought was really interesting. He was talking about the possibility of satellite or outside shows happening at MCA shows that happened outside the MCA. Is that something that has been talked about or even considered, just for the fact that I know that there's the 12 by 12 and there's the educational room on the ground level, just, I guess, as a way to open up the museum to show more local artists, or you know, just to give shows, I guess, to create more shows for the museum.
I think, well, the Theaster Gates show that I did, that he brought his work to the community, but I don't think the museum has the staff or the time to do shows beyond itself. At that point, I think, what's the point of that? I would think that that's something that the community should do. It's probably easier, and you don't necessarily need the MCA imprimatur to make a good show. There's, in fact, I would think what I think is that Chicago can be. Why can't Chicago be a place like Paris in the 20s or 40s, or New York in the 60s? Rather than waiting for the MCA or for certain galleries to create a community, I think artists, anybody who, you know, is waiting for someone to have a satellite offshoot, they just need to make that themselves. And then more people would come to Chicago. It would be more attention on your work, because then it would be it would be a community. And so I don't know how many people would come to a satellite show of the MCA. I mean, I would like to think they would, but I think it would be almost, I don't know, maybe Paul, you have a answer to that question.
I think the financial consideration is really interesting. I think Wesley was talking more about a virtual clearinghouse kind of facility where, you know, because we don't have really good art criticism in Chicago, and there's not a particularly centralized location for the dissemination of information, you know, that's really a cornucopia of all of it. So that he was thinking something about where you could have online exhibits, you could have criticism, you could have, you know, announcements about exhibitions that were at other venues by other entities. You could take it, you know, you could go from there.
But does the MCA need to be that facilitator?
I don't know. No, it doesn't need to be, and I'm not sure that I agree fully. I mean, Wesley and I have discussed this, you know, from different vantage points periodically. But I think that the MCA has been innovative in a number of directions, and I think that's good. And I think the MCA, perhaps more than many museums I'm aware of, is defining the territory that museums are going to go in the future. I think the MCA is more responsible to its audience than, you know, than most museums are, and that this could be an extension of that kind of growth and definition of how a museum functions and what it is.
Well, the MoMA and I think the Whitney have or maybe LACMA, I'm not sure which museums, but they have a few online portals to do this kind of thing.
They do. So does the Walker.
Oh, the Walker, yeah. But it's not, we just started our first blog with the Mark Bradford project. And so that was our first initial foray into the online World Wide Web of art. So, I mean, we obviously have a website, but I don't know if that...
I noticed that you've got video on your website now. I don't know how long it's been there, but I thought that was a nice addition.
Yeah, I've had video for all my Here Not There shows are performative, so I've always put video on there. But it's a new, because they're performative, but it's a new foray for the larger 2D exhibitions to have video.
Let me shift gears entirely, and maybe we'll move towards wrapping this up or opening it up for more questions. I want to know about art history, and how much art history do you think artists should know? I mean, do you think they have to know who Arthur Dove is, or do you think they have to go back further and know Jacques-Louis David, or do they have to know all the dominant artists in the world today, or do they only have to know, you know, white American males? What?
Well, I guess it goes back to my little spiel about knowing your medium, and I would think then you would need to go to your medium as far as it goes.
That's a really good way of putting it. I like that, because most people would say, oh, you don't need to know that much, or yeah, you need to know a lot. But most people don't stick it into a relationship to one's medium and the precedents that possibly influence that person. That's a really good way to put it.
Yeah, I think, and the problem might be if you're a multimedia artist, because then you need to know everything. But those are part of the tools that you have. So I think some people think that they don't need to know those, and that they'll just.
I think that's true too. How many of the artists that you work with have respectable art history knowledge? You know, it's amazing. It's amazing what artists know. I'm always fascinated, and then they know a lot about whatever the idea is. I mean, they're well educated and well informed, and it may not necessarily be from school. But like Derek Chan, I did his 12 by 12. He did a project on the four corners of New Mexico, and he went and spent a lot of time there, and he's been really, you know, thinking through a lot of ideas and working with professors, and it's amazing how you know, committed people. I mean, that's how it should be. People should be really committed to their field in whatever, to the medium, to the idea. I mean, that's why I like what I do, because I'm learning constantly about either a medium, or learning about history, or the world as it is now. Like the Jeremy Daller show, where we had to have Jeremy did a project on the Iraq War, and he enlisted me to find experts, people with firsthand knowledge of Iraq, to engage in conversations with the public. I had no idea that Chicago had one of the largest Iraqi refugee population in the country, and then to really get, and this is going back to you don't necessarily have to you can create an experience. You don't necessarily have to stick to one medium, but and so he offered this experience of Iraq War, and we brought all these experts who, that's what the piece was about, and really learning from people with firsthand knowledge of Iraq. And so I think that's part of the practice, is knowing your field, whatever your field is, and really digging deep and figuring out how you fit in it. That sounds good. Okay, I like that. I see that Katrin has a question, and you are now unmuted. Katrin.
Yes, this relates to what you were talking about much earlier in the conversation about how you go and find artists. And so my question is, what happens if an artist contacts you completely cold? You know, somebody who knows what you've been curating, somebody who knows sort of what you're interested in, but who you've never heard of. You know, you get an email with their website with maybe a little note. Do you even look at the work, or like what happens?
So it depends on how they contact me, and so if it's by phone, that depends on the day. If it's I I try to be as open as possible. I often encourage people to not start at the MCA. This is not necessarily the best place to start. I still think going out and you know, having your own shows and being in small shows and building a network, I think that's more important than the MCA. It's somewhat of a waste of time if you've never shown before.
Well, I didn't really necessarily mean if you've never shown
I can't really
before.
hear
Like,
you.
You know, show them and you know, okay. I didn't necessarily
I can't
mean,
hear you.
you know, if you've never had a, you know what, then my connection's
Katrina's
bad.
not asking about people
Never mind.
Well, Katrina's asking about people who've never had any exposure. So let's say that someone's had some gallery shows and they've been decent. What about that person and getting in touch with you?
Yeah, so I do studio visits. A lot of people say, come visit my studio. A lot of people, I guess the best thing would be to email me or drop a card in the mail telling me where their show is, so that I see the show. I mean, that's difficult. It's difficult to get around the city. I don't have a car, but I have a bike, and so I try to see as much. If you know, if the work looks interesting, and then I already gave you kind of my criteria. If somebody's really doing something that's pushing the field forward, I try to go see it. I see a lot of stuff. I try to see as much as possible, and so when people say, "Hey, I have this show," I try to go see it. You know, if it's something that seems interesting to me.
I think that all sounds really fabulous. I'm going to unmute everybody, and we're going to hear the cacophony, and we're going to see if anybody has any questions that hasn't raised their hand, and we'll take it from there for a moment. Everybody is now unmuted. There's the echo. Anybody want to talk?
As an outsider living in Kansas, and I hear you say that the MCA, we need to do that. I see it as not a need, but an opportunity.
Bill, hold on. I'm going to mute everybody because all I hear is echo. So I'm muting all, and then I'm unmuting Bill. Bill, you are now unmuted, and I'm unmuting Tricia. Go ahead, Bill.
Well, you said, does the MCA need to do that to spawn gallery or shows for younger artists or new artists or whatever? And to me, it's not a need, it's an opportunity for the MCA to be in the future of art. It sounds like you're tying yourself to a piece of real estate that, and a sort of a corporate policy of showing that has its panache or whatever, but it's not spreading the word. You know, and opening up opportunity. It's an opportunity for you rather than an obligation.
Well, I did mention that you know, my interest in museums is that it's a physical place. As we progress and have less public space, I still find museums are not corporate, actually a space that people can go where you physically come in contact with the ideas of another artist, and you're in a context with other people. And that's what my Without You I'm Nothing show is about, that providing these opportunities for people to have a public engagement in a way that is not able to happen where you're coming up against a stranger in public space, and you're in a private, you feel like you're in a private space. Now that said, that doesn't negate the power of online engagement. It's just as it stands right now, and I'm not 100% sure where Madeline is thinking in terms of those lines, but you know, there's limited resources in terms of budget, time. We do have a Museum 2 program. That is our first responsibility to the public. And outside of that, that may be a lost opportunity. I mean, yeah, everything's a lost opportunity. We have a warehouse that could be programmed. We have, we could program all over the city. But it's a question of resources and mission and vision that, just institutions are bound to their vision and mission, and whether in the future online programming, online, art exhibits. We did do 2 online programs. One was where you could take, I forget who, it was right when I started. I'm blanking on who the curator was, but you could curate the museum's collection. So it was both physical, in the physical space, and it had an online component. The other exhibition we did was to travel all across the country and interview curators and people who were actually in the business of putting on exhibitions, and really hear, and professors talking about what contemporary art is. So those are 2 online exhibitions. I don't know if, I personally, I'm probably the most immaterial curator of the MCA, but I don't feel a driving need for my ability to get artists seen to have that have an online exhibition. I mean, I do put my artists' work online in video format, but I don't have a pressing need. Maybe some other curators in the future will.
Thank you. I understand the dilemma, and totally. I feel a sense of reverence when I go to the MCA, and it's a special place. But when it becomes such a special place, there are very few shows, and there are very few people, and it's highly competitive. So we're not talking about spreading out, giving a lot of opportunities to young artists, because there's just no space. Right?
Well, that's why I said make your own opportunities.
Well,
I mean,
that's standoffish to me to say hey, well, go make your own opportunities. We are who we are. You're saying that we are this special place. And
no, but there's a certain process, Bill, where you have your 4 artists get together and do their own self-curated exhibit, and then they do it a couple of times, and they swap mailing lists, and they share, and then maybe some gallery will do a group show, and then maybe a university does the group show, and then maybe the artist gets a one, so that it's not, there's not many ball players who make it to the major leagues out of high school,
Luke Toymans came to the Art Institute and spoke, and he presented literally every show he's ever been in. And his first show was his friend's swimming pool that had no water in it. And that's how you get noticed. You put up a show that is not even in a gallery. It's a swimming pool. And where is he today? He's more well-known than people who are waiting for some museum to provide more opportunities for them. Yes, I agree that it probably sounds standoffish, but, I mean, I have a show, I have 15 weeks. I could have easily given it over to one artist. I have 15 artists. I mean, 1 each week. That's insane. No curator does that. That's crazy. But I wanted to provide 15 opportunities as opposed to 1. I mean, that's not a lot, but it's a small building, and there's only so much that you can do. And I've done group shows where I've tried to include 30, 40 Chicago artists when nobody else showed a Chicago artist. I'm not trying to apologize, but I'm saying that we have certain we are a certain institution, we have a certain mission, and it's not necessarily to help every artist, and that has to be every artist's mission, to help yourself and help other artists, because the artists who become successful are usually artists who are connected in a network to other artists where they're showing together. And you see it, that's why I said Paris and New York. You see pockets, or you could say LA with, you know, the lights artists, Portland. You see pockets of people where they're coming together and they're working together to create a community, and people want a part of that. They want to be where the energy is. It's not usually one artist, and I really think it's the responsibility of artists too to create opportunities not just for themselves but for other people. And not everybody can make it. Like Paul said, you know, there's only a certain artist, a certain number of artists who make it to the big league from where do you say, high school? But there's only a certain number. I mean, look at how many basketball players and football players and baseball players there are. You know, that to say that start more, you know, major leagues. Well, you know, you look at soccer. I mean, there's tons of different. You know, you just have to do your thing and not necessarily wait for some institution to rain down or some, you know, I don't know. I could go on forever.
I'm going to stop you. I think that's a really important point, and I think that's what, you know, part of this course is all about, is taking responsibility for your career and not waiting to be anointed by a gallery or a museum, but to take responsibility. And, you know, there are also lots of different art worlds. And, you know, the museum is one art world, but there are others. And there are a lot of people, you know, it depends on what you're after and what your definition of success is. But, you know, there's plenty of people who do better not showing in galleries and museums than many who do. There's a lot of different choices.
You know, Thelma Golden did a show at, she's the director of the Studio Museum in Harlem, and she did a show because she was in her friend's house, and they said, oh, here's this artist, don't you know this artist? And all these artists are being shown on 125th Street, and they make quite a successful living out of selling their work. And she's, no, I don't know these artists. So that's what she did. She thought, okay, why not bring these artists into the contemporary field and see what happens. But, I mean, Paul's totally right. These artists didn't need the Studio Museum in Harlem to anoint them. They were already making, you know, they were doing art full time. And they didn't necessarily need, and coming into the Studio Museum of Harlem didn't help them make any more money than what they were already making. So I'm just a little leery of that a museum like the MCA or some other institution like is the person who anoints you or is the imprimatur, because if you look back, so many artists they got their start in really it's only later in their career that they had a museum show.
Totally true. Let's stop this here. I think it's been really fabulous. One of the things I take away from this conversation in particular is that Tricia is a real person working in a real building with, you know, real emotional and intellectual ideas, and that she's accessible and that she's available. You know, I think a lot of us, you know, I mean, like, I don't know. I was surprised to find out that my grade school teachers had bodily functions. You know, I think there's some of that, you know, with museums, we put these people up on a pedestal or dig them a hole, but that we don't necessarily realize that, you know, a lot of what they're after are the same kinds of things that we're after. And I also think it's really interesting that, you know, we're getting advice and expert opinion from people in lots of different directions and fields. But, you know, the message tends to be pretty much the same, is, you know, take responsibility for what you're doing, do it good, be unique, be honest, be yourself. Don't pay too much attention to the trends, but know your art history, at least in your medium, and odds are things are going to work out for you. You know, and the other thing is that unlike baseball, where you can look at all the statistics or all these sports, art is totally subjective. You know, and there's plenty of really lousy artists that are making a really fabulous living, and there are plenty of really good artists that aren't, you know, and You know, some of it's just the numbers and maintaining the effort and keeping it going. I'd like to wrap this up. Tricia, do you want to say anything in conclusion?
Good luck.
All right. I think this has been really great. Tricia, thank you very, very much. And we're going to have we'll have a brunch at the end of this class, and it'll probably be in the middle of May when the garden looks nice, and I hope to see you then.
Okay, thanks.
At the museum. Thanks very much.
Okay,
right.
bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.